Welcome to Mindful Drawing. I'm Robert, and I'll be your guide on this meditation practice that enters the space of awareness through the act of drawing. Today I feel like we should just move our arm around, move our hand around, get some flowing expression out onto the page, see what that pen or pencil can do, feel the interaction of the fibers and the graphite or the ink, and just use that as a way to let out anything that may be inside, bottling up any tension, release through the breath, release through the sweeping action of drawing a curve or a line. Let those lines build up into some generally lightly organized network of overlaps, a grid of intersections, a grid of crossings at various angles. Nothing too controlled or constrained, free to become just a pile, maybe a little hairball, giving depth to that two-dimensional display of flow, bringing it down into the space of the page of perception, and just having some quiet time to draw and imagine within that paper there. You don't need much, just a pen or pencil that you like to draw with. I'm going to start with this kind of heavy 5mm pencil just to allow for like a lot of extension, flow, and feeling, and then switch over to a simple pen when I want to do a little bit more precision, bring a little emphasis with a darker line. But whatever you have handy will work. A sketch pad, a piece of Bristol like I'm using, or the back of an envelope is just fine. These exercises are meant to be accessible anywhere, so go ahead and gather your supplies, establish your space, and let's draw together. I don't know if I have a theme so much today, but I had an idea and we'll follow it along, starting with a little free-flowing expression, getting just movement out and letting some breath flow out there onto the paper, and then drawing something into it as a little bit of a field or landscape condition. So for the warm-up, what we'll try to do is loosen the mind and loosen the hands a little bit by just drawing kind of a crossing, diagonal, weaving pattern across the paper. And all that'll start with is some line that goes from one cornerish to the other cornerish, just dividing it across the grain a little bit there. And what we'll end up doing is crossing things in both directions like that diagonally, but they don't need to be a grid. They can be loose, and this is where we can just maybe close the eyes or just move the hand in a little bit of playful way, trying some different things out as we brush across the page, forward and back, left to right or right to left, letting these lines create a kind of dense, maybe slightly disorganized weave there. And we'll do that a little longer format when we move to the exercise. So now just getting familiar with the motion. I'm starting to see something of what it might look like, but a few errant lines that run counter to the grain, lighter or heavier, wobbling or connected. We'll end up with a bit of a hairball, just kind of a collection there, and you can choose how far to push the disorganizedness or the organizedness of it. Just for future reference, what we'll look at after we develop that grid so it can be accessible is finding a few of these regions, giving them a bit of an outline or an offset. I'll do it a little more exaggerated here because it's small. Drawing the space within the space to establish a border and edge, and then just extending one corner down to kind of dig out from that territory. So that should work anywhere and in any kind of configuration of that grid. And moving to the larger one, I debated a little pen or pencil. I might actually start with the pencil just to have something that moves smoother and can hold it a little differently, less precise. Just use this first part as a releasing exercise. Taking a couple of breaths, coming to the place where we are, feeling things out. Maybe give the hips and lower back a little side to side, little forward and back, just to feel where they're at and settle into that position. Give the shoulders a little shrug, roll forward and back a couple of times, and feeling things out, maybe raising side to side. Bring the shoulders up towards the ears, extend the neck, and then drop it all down and back. Take a couple of deep breaths and maybe roll the neck a little. Breathing in and just letting a light movement move around to loosen up for a couple of rolls, and breathing in and going back the other way on the exhalation. In our present here, we have our space and this open page to engage with. And let's just let some curves flow out across it, cutting it diagonally, playing with the hand and how it may hold the pen or pencil, extended like a brush or like a writing instrument, whichever comes to you, maybe trying a few different ones out. A little bit of play and guidance, perhaps. A little bit of just letting the tool move across the paper. You can work from one direction or play and jump around, left, right, up, down. What we're going to do after having a few lines start to gather here is use them to enter into the presence of this space with a few breaths. When you're ready for the next line, taking a deep breath in, establishing your presence in space, and then as you exhale, letting it just flow out across the page. We'll do that for the next several, bringing some oxygenation and slowness to our expression, breathing in and letting it guide through the exhalation out across that territory. In to establish, out to mark, in to be present, out to become a part of. In to bring that slowness, the filling up and out to bring relief and a speed of relaxation. In to establish and out to bring attention. Work through a few more at your pace, bringing some quiet attention to that breath, filling up what's there on the page. It can get quite dense if you have the space, loose. Just keep breathing in to find place and out to find that mindful presence. We'll take our last couple of lines during this phase of the exercise. Let's bring them in really slow, really allow the senses of the fingers, of the arm, the perception of the eye to be guided by a slow breath, and absorb all sensation of the ink or graphite gradually depositing into the fibers of the paper, moving just at the edge of uncomfortably slow, several cycles of breath across each line. The eyes now having to take in the new territory, landscape below, Probably a little guiding of our hand as it sees paths through. Well, the slower we can move that pen or pencil, the more it just takes the path that our hand can provide, that our eyes may suggest, and that the fibers and the material of the medium allow. And bring the last few of your weaving net of lines to a close. Continue with the same tool or switch, up to you. I think the big pencil will be a little soft now. But within this field, taking a few moments with a few slow, stopped breaths to just close the eyes and be present away from the drawing for a moment. Breathing in at a relaxed pace and breathing out with the weight of your body on the lungs. A couple of those. In and relaxed, out with relief. And the next exhale, open the eyes slowly and take in the lines on the page, filling it up. Let them drift, the eyes drift through that network of lines. And perhaps there's a shape here or there that stands out, larger, different, nested in the middle, wherever that's drawn to first. Move into that shape and just bring its boundary in a little bit. It doesn't need to be precise, but it can follow roughly the curves around a closed space, just to mark it off with having an edge separate from the lines that bind it. And from that place, work outwards for a while, any area large enough next to it, doing the same, just tracking around, using the space we've made with our attention between eye and hand to guide that emotion, following an edge, bringing attention to that edge, seeing that shape is. Perhaps hard when lines cross quickly with sharp corners, perhaps soft when lines wrap or weave. Some spaces may be very small, can leave them as they are, just working through the ones that are accessible, bringing demarcation to the boundaries, slowly expanding the territory of the intersections. And spending a few moments in quiet practicing that hand-eye coordination, that mindful attention to how you create a shape, how you draw a line next to a line, how you connect a corner, bringing your mindfulness to the act of drawing for the next few minutes. And with that time spent just exploring the field and the drawing, you may begin to see things, perhaps patterns or trajectories, places of tightness, compression, places of opening up, regularity, indifference. And I can begin to guide the reading as our attention is to figure, composition, shape, patterns of the overall scene through the application of a localized detail or technique. And with the many lines forming the overall space of the page, we can use this for the rest of class if you'd like, just to have a meditative space of repetition that each brings a new interface to the movement of the hand, a new level of novel attention to that markation on the paper. But you may also have a smaller page. If you begin to run out of cells to fill, you can also explore adding another layer of dimension to this, working our way down into the paper, bringing space to the 2D. So wherever you choose to go, I'll introduce another phase of looking, another phase of seeing, to open up more potential in the drawing. But feel free to go at your own pace from here. The repetition can be clear. The path now unfolded, unique to your space, your paper, your original expression, forming the page, a place for you to explore. But as I showed in the warm-up, at one corner of each of these, and I suppose, depending on how you see it, could be any corner you kind of choose, but probably the furthest away, back right or so, and draw a line straight down towards yourself, counter to the general diagonal grain, and perceive that line roughly down towards the self, starting to mark out a space receding back into the page. And it can be a little diagonal if you would like. It doesn't have to go all the way down. If it reaches a bit and then branches two new diagonals, it'll look like a bottom to the hole forming in the paper. We just draw it to the bottom, to the down. Some very small ones, slivers, larger ones, basins, a unique variety forming. Something like a city of basements carved out, waiting for something to plug in, to extend above. Or perhaps we begin to see opportunities in the below. As we could sink or invert ideas into this space. We have plenty of cells, plenty of room to keep exploring as we head into another time of quiet drawing with the self. You may find ways along these edges to give them definition. Perhaps little windows following along, or rectangles, or just lines of coarsework, brick following along, bringing definition to the edge, distinguishing in from out of the cell. No perspective here, just repeated courses following diagonals fit into the framework of the drawing potentially. Working along the diagonals established in the original expression, you can play and see what you might find. The edges parallel-ish, or just keep developing cells, sinking in. Cells can continue on to fill more and more. You might find some other patterns as you're drawing and exploring, and perhaps can play to reinforce some of the movement and the flow in the in-between spaces, the ones too small for the offsetting, for the sinking in, the ones that form paths or lines, a densification, thickening there, reinforcing the motion. Perhaps a little park, a little river in this landscape developing. Just bringing more layers to the drawing, a lot of little moves, beginning to create a whole world just from the breath, the motion of the pencil or the pen, the time spent present in an action, and exploring through the attention of the eye, the opening a little bit of the imagination with some oxygen, with some quiet. Being receptive to where things might go, how they might form and look. And it may also just be a bunch of messy crossing lines. We've had time to feel the paper, had time to feel how the pencil or pen mark and leave a trace. The drawing an action in itself, taking up a little space, marking out a little territory with each step onto that paper. The canvas gradually accumulating some dust, a couple of patterns. Just a minute or two left to the session. Feel free to continue moving that pen or pencil, exploring on the page. I'm going to bring this to a close. Just a few more voids calling out for a little fill or interaction. Plenty more of the page open to future exploration. But for the time now, done its practice, done its contribution, and take just a moment to re-roll those shoulders, return or flex the neck or head, side to side, forward and back. To breathe in deeply and expand. To let out the air with a bit of a sigh. And completely sink into the space you've made there. I thank you for joining along through that exercise. I hope perhaps you found something inspiring, creative, or just relaxing out of it, getting that motion expressed onto the page, sinking into that space of flow and turbulence that we might create, and just having a few minutes of quiet to be in our own space with one thing, that task of drawing, that act of expression, creating something. Let me know what you find in the exercise. Leave a comment below. Give it a thumbs up if you liked the video, and feel free to share with your friends to bring more people into this expression of mindfulness through the act of drawing. You can find new videos usually every Wednesday morning here on YouTube, and you can make up your own exercises at any time just by following the cycles of the breath, following that engagement of attention to your act right there at the point of the pen or pencil, and maybe release a few of the problems lurking in the mind onto that piece of paper, receptive, open, and creative. I thank you for joining. This is Brooks is Fun signing off. Draw well.